In this video, we're talking about aviation fuel and why that's important to you. You hear a lot about the future of ethanol, and there's some exciting things on the horizon. One of them in particular is SAF, or sustainable aviation fuel. Robert, when you hear that, what do you think of that? And tell us a little bit more of what all that means and how that affects everybody in the state of Nebraska, ethanol plants across the nation, and the entire, entire world travel plans.
Well, as I travel around the country, there's a lot of concern from everyday consumers and farmers. You see EVs coming, you see increased fuel economy standards, that gas tank is getting smaller. And we're trying to be a higher percentage of it with E15, E30, and E85, but ultimately it's shrinking. And so what are our new opportunities? And sustainable aviation fuel is by far the greatest opportunity. I mean, the U.S. alone has a sustainable aviation fuel goal of 3 billion gallons by 2030. And they use ethanol as the preferred feedstock. They don't use ethanol as sustainable aviation fuel. They use it as a feedstock to create the sustainable aviation fuel. And ultimately, it takes 1.7 gallons of ethanol to make 1 gallon of SAF. And so this is a huge opportunity. And if the rules are done right, and if everything lines up as the airlines themselves want, we will not only be sustaining the ethanol industry, but we'll be building new production facilities. And that's a very interesting time. I've lived through the Wild West of the build-out back in the mid-2000s. It would be exciting to see it again, and given today's commodity prices, it'd be welcomed across agriculture.
Yeah, I'd like to hit on that, Robert. Also, you mentioned the commodity prices, and here we are in Grand Island, Nebraska, the center of corn country. What does this mean for the agricultural side, for the farmer side? I think that you know, when you look at the big picture of growing demand for the corn that we produce in our country, exports aren't exactly keeping up with the growth and supply that we're able to get. Corn hybrids keep getting better. Our farmers are very good at producing corn, but we've got to have more demand to meet that increased supply. And I think that SAF is a good opportunity for us to grow our usage base for corn, and it'll be needed as we go down the road with the competition that we're seeing in the world markets for exports.
Yeah, let's be clear. This year, we're going to grind more corn than we ever have for ethanol. We're going to have record ethanol production. We're going to have record ethanol exports. So the ethanol industry is doing all we can at this point to consume as much corn as we can and help keep those prices as high as possible. And I think it's lost a lot of times that the ethanol industry makes more money when it's $6 corn instead of $4 corn because of the ties to petroleum prices with corn and other items. So it's not that we're enjoying cheaper prices on the behalf or on the back of the farmers. We're actually want them to have higher prices and be profitable. But long story short, these new uses like SAF are going to be very important for every farmer, every consumer, and everyone that is concerned about the environment.
As we go full circle with that, also going back to the carbon sequestration, I think Nebraska particularly has a real opportunity here where we've got a pipeline in place that we're able to use for these carbon projects that other regions of the country don't necessarily have. So that's value added to Nebraska farmers and their corn price. You know, that's going to create more demand for Nebraska ethanol because we're able to use that ethanol for sustainable aviation fuel, which should command a higher price for the ethanol, higher price for the corn.
Well, Brent, one of the other things that your team's working on is climate smart agriculture. You hear a lot of it out there, and there's a lot of things, good and bad, that are true, and maybe some misnomers out there that probably should be addressed.
I really appreciate that Chief is kind of a pioneer in trying to get ahead of this climate smart agriculture program. The Inflation Reduction Act passed a couple years ago through Congress, authorized a whole lot of money to come through and have these carbon intensity scores on everything from corn to ethanol plants and a whole lot of other industries. Well, to be able to take advantage of that, we have to be able to measure our carbon intensity scores. Now, the model's still out on that, and I think, you know, I know a guy sitting next to me that always says it's all about the model, but we know that we're going to have to be able to score our feedstocks, and so we need to practice that. I think the USDA has done a good thing where they've allowed us to have this grant where they say, okay, let's talk about how we're going to account for what practices have been done on this corn that you bring into your plant. It's something that we know is coming, and this kind of allows us the opportunity to be able to say, okay, this corn that we took in today was off of a no-till field of ground, or it had a cover crop planted on it. So once we start keeping those records, we'll be able to have a database where we can say, you know, the carbon intensity score of this kernel or this percentage of the bushels that we take into our plant then follows through to our plant carbon intensity score. And then that gets us into some of these more LCFS value-added markets in different parts of the country where, again, we can get more money for our ethanol, and then we pass that savings or that profit along to the farmers that are selling us the corn. So there's a lot of opportunities there. I think it's a win-win for both the ethanol plant and for the farmer in the end.
You can download our app now. The link is below. And be sure to follow us on our socials.